my brother obviously has a master's in engineering, and so I was kind of floored by this. But not being in engineering, I don't understand what goes into that. But not only do you determine the shape and the size and the material and whatever you're going to powder coat it with or plate it with or whatever to stop the rust corrosion, you have to go through the mathematics of every little piece and simulating weights and stresses and materials and that type of thing to really understand mathematically, is this strong enough to hold 7 bikes at 35, 40 pounds a bike? So there we have spreadsheets after spreadsheet,
Wow.
calculation after calculation, and stress factors and safety factors, and just to make sure mathematically we understood where we're at before we really got into crazy off-road testing,
So what did you use to find the stress factor? Just kept putting weights on a bike or something?
Well, so, from the engineering standpoint, there's formulas and calculations that he can simulate to create it. And this was kind of a funny story. My experience, again, isn't with engineering. And so he's talking me through this process of you do the math and then you prove the math. So we would do the math and then we would go out to test it and see if the math proved correct, right? So we would, I don't know if you want to go here, but I can talk a little bit about our testing scenarios and building this.
No, go ahead.
So we had built one, and we're like, okay, now we got to prove this. And so my brother tells me, literally, we're going to go break this thing. We got to take it to the break point. What is it going to take? And so we had this bike that I told you about when I was a kid. I still have this nice chromoly frame back from the late 80s. We had a couple older bikes. We had a couple newer bikes. We put 7 bikes on here at full weight. And we're like, okay, well, we'll start there. That's roughly, I don't have the sheet in front of me where we calculate and roll this down, but I believe that was, it was 230, or actually it was 220, 240, somewhere in that range of weight of bikes. And we know where all the bad roads are in the city, right? There's those dips in the road and bad corners. And we're like, we're going to go hit these and we're going to hit them hard. And so he would drive or I would drive, and one of us would be standing on the corner with a camera filming this person that's taking this corner at 20 miles an hour that, really shouldn't be taken that fast. And there's a big old dip and a shake to the left and right, really jostling things around. And it was kind of funny because we did this at multiple spots throughout the city where we knew roads were bad. We're like, we got to make sure our straps never drop a bike. We got to make sure our bike doesn't fold over on a sharp corner with a heavy bump. And so there's all these little things we did to like overload the racks. And I can keep telling you a couple more stories there if you want to hear, but that's kind of the start of this anyway.
I love the process. Like, that really interests me, like the process you go through. So yeah, you could tell as many stories as you want.
Well, and kind of further on the testing, once we were a little bit further down the road, we had, we kind of did this at a couple different stages. And when we were getting close to our production ready model, this is quite a bit later. Maybe I've screwed up my date. So this prototyping and testing, this started in 2017. Well, in 2018, we're getting closer to launch. We've actually got products that we need to test. We actually did the same thing, only this time we drove 50 miles to our west, out into the desert, up into these hills, and we're like, we are really going to break this rack this time. We had these bikes, and we took some old weights, and we had weight that we strapped onto every bike. So after we had done the same testing I just talked about with these newer racks, We then went out west saying, we're going to break these whatever it takes. We strapped 20 pounds on each bike. So not only did we already have 230 some odd pounds, we strapped 20 pounds onto 7 bikes. So we added 140 to that. I think my end calculation was we had close to 500 pounds of weight on the hitch, right? So there's the rack, there's the bikes, and the additional weight. We were well in the, let's see, you take 220 plus another 140. We're at 360 bike pounds on this rack, and we're driving these dirt roads, power sliding corners, hitting dips and corners, and then we found this. Basically, it was a 4-wheel drive road in the hills, and we basically one person was driving behind the other, kind of trying to film it, see what kind of motion we could see, and we were going as fast as we could over bumps. Like, this was uncomfortably fast on roads that you wouldn't ever want to do this to your vehicle, let alone your bikes on a rack.
What kind of vehicle are we using here? I feel like it's got to be a truck or something.
Yeah. So at this time, I was driving a Toyota Tacoma, and so we've got it loaded, and we're just pounding up the road and pounding down the road, trying to break this thing. And we found a few things that we ended up changing because of this, but there was nothing ever catastrophic. In fact, the rack we hauled bikes out on, we hauled them back home on. We had the second vehicle with another rack on, thinking we're going to break this one and it's going to go in the bed of the truck, and the bikes are going to go on this other rack so we can get home. But even in all the dropping off steps and pounding this thing to death, we didn't break it. We definitely found some little things we could improve upon, and we have definitely changed those to make it better. So that kind of weight, that kind of testing, it does highlight, where problems can arise. And we were really concerned on, some crazy corner with a bump. You don't want these racks to fold over sideways with a bunch of weight on them. And I don't know if you've looked at the hinge mechanism and that hitch lower piece. We've really made that beefy strong to make sure there's no corners. You're not gonna have a problem. So
if you enjoyed this clip from the Rubber Side Down podcast, please like and subscribe. To listen to the full episode, search the Rubber Side Down in your streaming platform or click the link below.